Who are you?
Many names. When I died, it was Minerva. Before that, Minerva and Mera. And on and on. The others, too. Juno, who was before called Uni. Jupiter, who was before called Tinian.
You are... gods.
No, not gods. We simply came before.
Assassin's Creed has many crazy things. The Animus, rope launchers in Victorian London, cities across the world built with conveniently placed pillars that don't really have any reason to be there unless you're doing parkour. As I said, those are crazy things in the Assassin's Creed universe, but they've got nothing on the most craziest thing of all. And you know what that is? It's the Isu, or the ones who came before. Now today we're going to be going over the entire Isu storyline within the Assassin's Creed series, but also ask the question, where's it going next? What's going on? With the Assassin's Creed universe progressing from 2024 and beyond, will the Isu make just as important of an impact in the Assassin's Creed series as they did in Odyssey, Valhalla, and the original games, or is something much sinister at play? All of that and more explained today in the Isu in Assassin's Creed. Explained! Subscribe if you like this and you want to see more, I guess. Let's go. So let's start from the very beginning. Who are the Isu and what's their story? The Isu, or the ones who came before, are a technologically advanced civilization of humanoid species that lived on Earth thousands of years before the humans did. They had massive futuristic cities, they had technological devices that could be used to literally change the fabric of reality. For example, the Apple of Eden. This could be used to control the minds of people. There was a technological skull, which was glorified CCTV to be able to monitor people from afar. Something else the Isu could do is they could perceive the future. The Isu, or the ones who came before, were a very powerful civilization. For reference, I feel like in real life, we could be at something like that in like 1,000 years, maybe. Anyway, the Isu had 6 senses. They had the same 5 that we humans have, but they had an extra one. The 6th sense of the ones who came before was to be able to perceive reality in a way that humans cannot. The future, the past, the present, all as one intermingling force. Now, certain assassins throughout history have had a fragment of this 6th sense, which we call eagle vision. But to specify, that is just a small percentage of what this 6th sense is. The Isu created humans as a subspecies to their own race. The Isu enslaved humans for their own gain, and they pretty much saw humans as below them, scum, if you will. So that's who the Isu are, or were. Now you might be thinking, well, they sound really powerful. You know, what happened? Where did they go? And why are humans the only things around now when we were the subspecies, the slave race to the Isu? Now, it gets pretty crazy. During the era of the Isu, a massive doomsday scenario was upon them. The sun was due to have the biggest coronal mass ejection it has ever had during the time of the Isu. Now, this solar flare would hit Earth, basically destroying the atmosphere, exposing the Earth to the radiation of space, and killing all life as we know it. Now, the Isu scrambled for decades and decades to be able to try to prevent this solar flare from occurring. As we know, the Isu used their 6th sense of perceiving time, future, present, and past to be able to look ahead, see what would happen, and how they can prevent it. After many, many failed attempts, the Isu kind of just decided, okay, you know, this is happening. We failed so many times in trying to prevent this, and it's gonna happen. There's nothing we can do about it. But what can we do to try and preserve some sort of a civilization, some sort of a legacy? So the Isu again used their perception of reality with their 6th sense to project a vision of their consciousness to the future to be able to guide humanity that would remain. But I'm gonna explain that in more detail later. So the world ends. The solar flare comes, destroys all of the Isu's humanity, their whole life, their whole race, their whole civilization, gone, kaput, dead. Now, the Earth was pretty much uninhabitable for a long time, but eventually, as all things do, the Earth started to heal and, become more habitable once again. Now, during this doomsday when the Earth wasn't really habitable, a lot of subspecies of the Isu, being us humans, survived. Now, they buried underground, they did what they could to keep going, and eventually they re-emerged. Once these humans emerged out into the world once again, they bred with each other and they started to build their own civilization without the dominance of the Isu. Thousands of years go by and humanity is in full swing. Fast forward thousands and thousands of years and you'll see characters like Ezio. Fast forward hundreds of years from that and you'll see characters like Desmond. So that's the backstory of the Isu. But if the ones who came before are completely wiped out, gone from this world, how are they interacting with characters like Cassandra, characters like Eivor, characters like Ezio in Assassin's Creed? How does that all work? It's kind of a mindfuck, so be prepared, but let me explain. So as I alluded to earlier, the Isu are able to project their minds through their sixth sense towards the future, the present, and the past, and to really see the world in a less literal sense, a sort of code, a sort of algorithm, rather than a physical and how we can see it. They can basically see reality how it truly is, and they can see the sort of, again, not in a literal sense, but this sort of algorithm of reality and project and predict what's going to come. So what they do is they build these massive temples that they know will be preserved when the world is ended. Usually they're underground somewhere that the coronal mass ejection, the solar flare from the sun, can't really get to and destroy. Now, what they hide within these temples is knowledge, pretty much. Knowledge that can either better the world or it can be used as a weapon. Now, if you take a look at the pieces of Eden, such as the Apple of Eden, these things eventually get found and put out into the world by humans. There are certain groups of people in the world that think these arbiters of knowledge should be used as a weapon, should be used to control, and so forms groups like the Templars and the Order of Ancients. They strive to use these pieces of Eden to control the masses because they think a controlled civilization is a peaceful civilization, and this is the way to one world peace. As a direct result and opposition to this way of thinking, you've got groups like the Hidden Ones and later the Assassins, who believe the way to true peace and freedom in humanity is for one to have their own opinion, their own rights to choose how they live, how they think, how they feel. And so you spark this war of belief, of ideology between the Templars and the Assassins. It's not just a war of good versus bad, it's an amalgamation of a battle of identity, of ideology, of belief, and if you want to cut it simply, freedom versus control. Now, what I'm about to say, I deliberately missed out of the setup for the Isu when I explained to you guys how they came about, who they were. But during the time of the Isu, a lot of the humans rebelled, and there was a massive war between Isu and human. The humans did not believe in oppression, they believed in their own freedom. Now, this directly mirrors and parallels the Templars versus Assassins. It shows that history always potentially repeats itself, which is also proven to be true when Desmond, Sean, Rebecca, and Lucy find out that a second coronal mass ejection is going to happen and the world will end once again. And again, the same thing with Layla. Anyway, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So the Isu can predict time going ahead, and they can see where certain characters in the future are going to interact with their pieces of Eden and their temples. So what they do is they leave messages directly for those characters to be able to interact with to try and stop the world from ending again. They may not have been able to save the world when they were around, but they can try to maybe stop it from happening in the future, or so they believe. Which is why in Assassin's Creed 2, Ezio meets this apparition, this figure, Minerva, one of the Isu, one of the ones who came before. They are not physically there, they are not physically conscious and talking to Ezio, or Desmond through Ezio, but these are more pre-recorded messages left from knowing what would happen, what they would say through their sixth sense. Are you with me? I know it's very complicated, but we'll get there. I told you this would be a mind It really is. So if you want a bit of a break to come back to this video and you want something more lighthearted, check out my Assassin's Creed Bloodlines for the PSP video game video. I really butchered that then, didn't I? It's up in the corner somewhere there. Click it if you want to check it out. And look, there it is. There it is. Okay, assuming you're all ready to carry on and the ones who did watch the ISU Bloodlines video are back, let's carry on. So what have we covered so far? The Isu are this ancient race of people who enslaved humans, a race that they created for their own gain. There was a massive war between the Isu and the humans during the Isu era. Then the world ended. But before the world did end, the Isu projected their minds towards the future to predict what would happen. And so they left messages for people of the future to try and direct them to save the world once again. Now, when playing the Assassin's Creed games or researching the Isu lore, there are two names that may come to mind: Juno and Minerva. As we know in real life history, Juno and Minerva are ancient Roman gods. Within the lore of the Assassin's Creed universe, the reason humans remember these Isu as gods, as deities, is because over time, memories are skewed. Imagine it like this. There are these two beings that were really alive, but they die. They leave small messages here and there. Now, the humans that emerge after the Isu are wiped out are going to likely remember Juno and Minerva for the political scientists of the time that they were. But imagine them telling their stories to their younger generations, and then those younger generations telling those stories verbally to their generation, and down the line, eventually, you're going to start to see these as myths, as legends, and hundreds of years down the line, you're going to see them as gods. And the exact same thing happened over and over again as different humans spread out across the world once it was re-inhabited. That's why you have the idea of these gods under different cultures, different beliefs, like Norse mythology, Arabic mythology with Basin, and I could go on. Now, as I explained earlier, the Isu are gone, their consciousness is not still around. Well, apart from one, Juno's consciousness is actually basically being imprisoned in a machine, to put it lightly. I did mention earlier that these gods were actually political activists and scientists and notable figures during their time. Now, if you play the Asgard section of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you will learn a lot about the story of how the world came to an end during the Isu era. Of course, this is through Eivor's lens of how he can perceive that time, so it's within the Norse mythology sort of setting. But long story short, Juno and Minerva disagreed on a lot. They saw Juno as a threat, and so they imprisoned her mind within a machine. There's more to it than that, but we've got to keep this video under 5,000 hours, so let's carry on. During Desmond's story, when he reaches the Grand Temple in America, he is confronted with the apparition of Minerva and the consciousness of Juno. To save the world, Desmond must touch a device called the Eye. The Eye basically contains the technology to save the world. But Desmond has to activate it because he actually possesses a high count of Isu DNA, and I'm going to explain how he has that later. Only someone with a high Isu DNA count can activate this Eye and save the world. Juno tells him to do it because if he does it, the world will be saved. But Minerva tells him not to do it because if he does, the world, yes, will be saved, but Juno's consciousness will be out into the world, will escape. After a back and forth debate, Desmond decides to save the world, but of course, Juno's consciousness is then set free, unleashed upon the world. Now, objectively, Juno is pretty bad. If you can size her up to anything, I guess think about the worst Templar you've ever met, and then, times that by 50? Maybe more. Anyway, Desmond dies, RIP to the GOAT, and a couple years later, Juno is revealed to be working with some pretty bad people to basically be resurrected. Now, you'd imagine this would be a big story point that would carry on in the Assassin's Creed games. Newsflash, there was a whole crazy action-packed ending to this saga of Juno being out into the world, her consciousness going crazy, being this rogue thing in the world. Yeah, it was ended in a comic book. It was ended in a comic book which involved a secret son of Desmond. It was all pretty crazy, but that's where it was left. Long story short, Desmond pretty much stopped Juno. He saved the world again, this time from the dominance of Juno. So that story's done. Juno's dead. RIP to not the GOAT, and we move on. I think now's the time to explain Isu DNA within humans and how that works. So technically, because the humans were created and evolved from the Isu directly, all humans technically have at least small amount of Isu DNA. You know, like they have to be able to have existed in the first place. But every now and then, it's unlikely, but somebody ends up possessing a high Isu DNA count, which means they have more Isu, the ones who came before, DNA within them than the average person. And that means they can utilize pieces of Eden, they can access a fragment of that sixth sense, being eagle vision, and they basically are able to see the world much more like the Isu were able to. Now, Altair, Ezio, Connor, Desmond, Edward, they all possessed high Isu DNA, which meant they were able to use eagle vision and interact with pieces of Eden. There are also people called sages. Now, just to specify, Desmond, Ezio, they are not sages. Being a sage is something different. Now, let me explain to you guys what is a sage in Assassin's Creed. Let's go again back to the Isu time and going back to when Juno was alive. Now, Juno had a lover. His name was Aita. Aita is able to be reincarnated into human DNA once every few hundred years, but there's no real specific time frame of when it happens. It happens kind of sporadically throughout history. Now, Aita's reincarnation is what you would call a sage. You think of Roberts from Assassin's Creed Black Flag. He was a reincarnation of Aita. Think of Jermaine, the villain from Assassin's Creed Unity. He was a reincarnation of Aita. Those are just two examples, but basically, Aita is reincarnated because he wants to reunite with Juno and be with his love once again, and to free her. And on throughout history, or future, however you perceive it, Aita tries to make this happen, to successes, to failures, and on and on. You can see an example of how this reincarnation process works at the end of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, when Odin and the gang insert their DNA into the life tree, setting the motion of their DNA reincarnating in evolution into motion. So there you have it. That is the Isu within the Assassin's Creed series. Now, what I want to talk about next is, where may it be going? Are we going to see a heavy emphasis on the Isu going ahead in the Assassin's Creed series, or is it going to take more of a backseat? The last thing we saw with the Isu was Basim. Now, Basim is a reincarnation of Loki, another Isu being from the time of the ones who came before. In Assassin's Creed Mirage, we get the backstory of how Basim sort of started to understand who he once was, and how this duality of Basim being a specific individual and Loki being a specific individual ended up merging to become, Basim how we see him in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, Basim was able to survive into the modern day. Now, I'm probably going to explain how that happened in a future video, because that's a whole video's worth of information in of itself. But if you want to find out right now, I would suggest looking up Assassin's Creed Valhalla ending explained, or something like that. Anyway, he's existing within the modern day as we know it in Assassin's Creed right now. The end of Assassin's Creed Valhalla showed him basically joining up with the assassins, but does he really mean it, or is he kind of going rogue, doing his own thing? What's gonna happen? There was also a leak of hidden files within Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now, these were pretty much data mined within the files of Assassin's Creed Mirage on PC. It seems to be that this is cut content that was going to be in the game, but developers didn't have enough time to implement it, or they decided it wasn't the time to do so yet, and so it was removed from the game. But we were able to find this cutscene in the game.
Hey, you there?
I'm here.
I just filed my report, did you see? Precursor GM confirmed.
Are you serious?
Yeah, watch the playback. Scrub to the end.
Damn. 3 years of doing this, I've never even seen a memory ghost.
It's a rare find, don't beat yourself up. But this 9th century DNA, it's a gold mine. You said it was collected by William Miles?
Miles? Why does that sound familiar?
Did you skip the history seminars?
Obviously not, it's mandatory.
Assassin Manor. One of the last before the Great Shift, you don't remember?
The shift was 21st century. Ancient history. What?
Can you just pretend to do your job?
Lay off.
I'm serious.
Look, I'm getting a coffee. You want one?
Yeah, can't say no to that.
Now, with that cutscene, along with leaks and rumours we've personally had on the internet and discussed, it seems that the future of modern day in the Assassin's Creed series is going to take a time jump into the future, being maybe 2090, sometime around then. So yeah, this sparks a lot of questions. Are the human race going to be more closer to what the Isu were in the future? And is there going to be another doomsday threat? Is there going to be, again, another repeat of history as we've seen it happen again and again in the Assassin's Creed universe? Is Basim going to still be around? Is he going to be seen as this sort of immortal, oppressive leader that sort of controls the fabric of reality, you know, even more than Abstergo did? Is the whole world going to be ruled by Abstergo? There's a lot of questions. You know, I can imagine there being this parallel between the Isu and how oppressive they were in their own time. Again, paralleled with Abstergo. Maybe Abstergo pretty much controlled the whole world in 2090. So you've got this parallel between bad guy, and the humans that were a sub-race of the Isu back then, parallel maybe the assassins still trying to fight back against this all-encompassing oppressive Abstergo of the year 2090. Approximately. That's how I kind of imagine it may go, but what I have noticed with Ubisoft is whatever you can imagine in your head for a really cool story, it's never really as good as you'd expect it to be. You can usually imagine something a lot better than what you actually get, with modern Ubisoft anyway. But that's a whole conversation for another day. So yeah, I know there were a few things that I specifically missed out of this video only because I just don't have the time to sit down for hours and hours and talk about the entire history of the Isu, but that's pretty much the gist of it from beginning to not really end, but to where we are right now. That's all the sort of main hitting points with the Isu, with the lore, and you know how it mingles with Assassin's Creed. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and if you want to see more just like this from me, consider pressing the subscribe button to stay up to date with Assassin's Creed Shadows and to take a look back at the Assassin's Creed series as a whole. Again, I made a pretty interesting video on Assassin's Creed Bloodlines for the PSP. Check it out. I'll put it as an end screen, and it is a card on screen right now. If there's anything you specifically think I should have mentioned, comment it below, and again, we can build a discussion and also build the AC community. My Instagram and Twitter are linked in the description. I talk about Assassin's Creed a lot, and you can see more about my life. Also, you can become a member by joining the channel today. It's $5 a month, and it supports me, and it also helps me to get these larger projects such as my Bloodlines video, my AC2 video, my Odyssey video. It helps to get those videos out quicker, better, faster, and you personally get them a week earlier if you're a member. I love you guys. May the Father of Understanding guide us. My throat hurts from all the fucking yapping I've just been doing, but I'm glad it's done. Now here's to 4 hours of editing this. Love it, mate.